I knew there was more to the story than just random words being thrown out, but how it all fitted together. Now, that was the real humdinger. I eventually worked it out when I realized there was a pattern to every single tale that's ever been told. It came to me on a YouTube channel type of thing. You know, one of them video type things you watch. It's like, there's a structure. Well, what's the structure? Well, this. Hello and welcome to the third circle. First video introduction to the third circle of how to be a great GM. In other words, the more advanced techniques that you should be incorporating into your games as you become more comfortable with running basic games. If you are a first or second circle user, you'll get here soon enough. Don't worry. So what are we going to be looking at? There are three domains that will define you as a great game master. The first one is campaigns, running efficient, successful, and satisfying campaigns, possibly the greatest demand that can be placed upon us as game masters. The second is improvisation, the ability to make up things on the fly and to make them feel as if they are integrated and all part of our bigger picture. And then performance, because ultimately that really is where there's a dividing line. When you look at all of these online celebrities who role play and that sort of thing, performance is really the main differentiator between them and the rest of us mere mortals, or so they say. I don't believe any of that. I think we can all be great GMs, and so that's why we are here. We're going to be looking at campaigns, designing and trying to bring some kind of control to the chaos. We're going to look at theme. How does theme help us in terms of crafting our campaigns? Overarching stories, bigger demands, so much bigger demands, making our conclusion so critical. We're going to look at world map. We're moving from regional maps as we were in second circle to third circle. We're now doing world maps. Very exciting stuff. PC growth, how to make the PCs grow within your campaign rather than to just have them running around killing everything that exists there. Improvisation 1, we don't want dead ends. And improvisation 2, no room. We always have room, and so we're going to figure out how to do that. Ignoring rules, my favorite subject of all time. Of course, Mr. Cheese might disagree with me, but we look at ignoring rules. We look at sounds, bang, boom, thump. Love those sounds, thump. It's such a satisfying thing to say, thump, 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 thump. Anyway, we look at sounds. We look at moods. What kind of mood? Dark, serious, or light and happy, different types of moods, and all the toys that we're going to need in order to achieve those moods. And then we review and we possibly advance to the next round of circles, if we so happen to get there. Now, today we're going to start talking about campaigns, improvisation, and performance. This is a broad overview of what you can expect throughout the course of the year. So, campaigns, design versus emergent storytelling. Now, emergent storytelling, nothing wrong with that. Yes, my campaign grew out of a whole bunch of different things. Perfectly fine. My campaign was designed from the very beginning. Perfectly fine. Either of those two are fine. We just need to temper our expectations accordingly. Improvisation. How we love improvisation. What are our goals? What are our actual goals when it comes to improvisation? And performance. What do we talk about when we talk about performance? Is it operatic? Is it great facial expressions? Is it the ability to do a whole bunch of very different accents? No, maybe. So many things. We're going to look at each and every single one of those and try and figure out just exactly how it all fits together today. All right, let's jump straight into it. So, designing a campaign, understanding the process of how we get to a campaign. So, what is a campaign to begin with? Well, let's unpack that for a little bit. It is a series of adventures or events that culminate in a magnificent conclusion of sorts, a completion of all of these disparate events coming together and giving us this grand finale. Now, there might be multiple angles to this grand finale, but it is a grand finale, after which time Nothing really from before is the same. Things have changed. So a campaign is a change. It's a period of change from one state into another with this event that happens in the middle, and all the strands are tied together. Does that mean that every single adventure within your campaign has to link towards a conclusion? No, you can have many different adventures going off in different directions, but the bulk of what the campaign is about need to come together at the very end in a conclusion. It's very, very, very difficult. Now, why would we want to do this? Why do we want to set ourselves up for this? If your campaign ends badly, the entire thing is wasted. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. It's terrifying. Terrifying. Ask the producers of Game of Thrones. Everyone loved. They got to their conclusion. Everyone went, well, and so now everything before it, well, I kind of feel dirty. So why would we want to do this? Why would we want to get here? A campaign is the greatest kind of investment that we can make as players of the game, whether it's game masters or player characters. It is the greatest investment that we can make because there is this long form narrative. There's this bigger goal to just having an adventure. You could have a whole lot of adventures linked together that, well, they have nothing to do with each other. They're just a series of adventures. It's fine. They happen every week or every 2 weeks or however long they take to play out, but they happen. Players, characters can live or die. It makes no real difference because the adventures are not very long. When we get to campaign level, when we get to the point where we're saying this is going to take a year or more to play, there is a huge investment, a huge investment on behalf of our time, on behalf of our mental attitude as well. There's planning, there's growth of the characters, hopefully. Because we have this long campaign, we have this opportunity, this advantage, I should say, to be able to explore multiple things about the character, rather than when we're having just adventures. There's an adventure, there's an adventure, there's an adventure. The adventures are usually focused around the adventure. Campaigns are the adventures and then the things in between them as well. And sometimes we forget about that. The period in between is as important as the actual adventures themselves. There's a huge sense of accomplishment as well. Oh, we just finished a 3-year campaign. Wow. There is nothing that we do as humans that takes that long to finish with regards to a narrative, a story. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's lovely. So there's a huge sense of accomplishment. And then before we even get to designing the campaign, we have to ask, is it right for your group? Some groups can't do it. They simply cannot do it. They don't have the time. Players are erratic on attendance. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they can't. A campaign will suffer if characters are not present. It becomes difficult. I get lots of questions from people saying, I've got a player who's in my campaign and he kind of shows up once or twice out of every 6 sessions. What should I do? Throw them away in terms of being at that particular table. Run a different game for them where it's adventures. So it doesn't matter. It's short form stuff. It doesn't link. It doesn't matter if the character's there or not there. It's just a fun role-playing experience. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is really nothing wrong with that. So does it fit your group? Does your group have time to actually invest in this kind of stuff? Is the effort worth it? Does your group appreciate it? Or is it more perhaps about the socializing aspect of it? Go back to the first circle where we talk about the fundamentals of what role-playing is all about. If it's not worth the effort, don't do it. It's a huge amount of effort. It's a huge amount of risk. And if the players are not interested, or the return of your time is not going to be useful, avoid it altogether. It really is important. So to talk to us a little bit about the minutiae of a campaign, Mr. Dirk Knight. Players are always going to want to problem solve. We're pretty good at doing it as human beings. We like to follow course. A lead to B, B to C, C to D, D to E. The trick is you don't want to be predictable, because then that ain't no fun. At the same time, A can't lead to D or to F because that don't make no sense. We need to make sure that we're going A to B to C to D, but in a way that is surprising or unusual. How do we do that? Well, we compare to what has been done before. We look at the components, we look at the players' characters, and figure out if we incorporate all of their aspects, all of their backgrounds, we still going A, B, C, D, but in between, there seems to be a whole lot more going on. By having a structure, by having a giant campaign, we can extend this out over quite a long period of time. Again, it allows us to put together all the dots in the right sequence, but to take longer to get there. Now, also bear in mind that sometimes the players ain't going to be too sharp. Kind of like this pencil. You're the sharpener. Every now and again, it doesn't hurt to include some kind of NPC or flashback sequence or hell, whatever you like, to make sure that the characters are aware that there is an actual fact in A, B, C, D, and E. They actually even have the answers. They just might need a refresher. Don't be afraid to do that neither. So, you need your structure. A, B, C, D. It's as simple as that. You're going to find out the rest of that in this video, as well as being able to guide the players back to these points. Not the PCs, mind. The PCs are not the ones figuring it out. It's the actual players. Right, you are. So, Sandbox versus Railroad. This is a term that we hear often, and I don't think we actually need it. I don't think there's a difference. I think people like to say there is one, but I don't think there actually is, because I can't see it personally. I understand that there is a difference between a GM who is a complete and utter arse and who wants to run the game according to their rules and their story is sacrosanct and cannot be changed and the players must do what they expect them to do. That's not railroading. That's just being a very bad game master. That's someone who doesn't know how to actually run a game properly. They're trying to tell a story and then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Railroading is where there is limited PC choice in terms of what happens. And I think that's called life. We don't have lots of choices. Things happen. You as the game master are going to be saying the train you're on suddenly starts to go into spasms as the track seems to be breaking apart. The PCs had no choice in whether that happened or not. That's the situation that you're placing them in. Is that railroading? I don't think so. I think it's your responsibility as the game master to be able to create that world in which the PCs are living. In that world, the train tracks happen to be coming apart at that specific stage because that's when you as the game master decided it was going to happen. Railroading would be telling the characters that they now climb onto the roof to escape. You could alternatively say there's a hatch that leads onto the roof. It seems to be the only safe space for you to stand. If that is the difference between railroading, well, I think it's a very, very small one. Sandboxing, on the other hand, is where we say that the players have all the choices and that we don't prepare anything, or what we do prepare has nothing to do with anything and is just there for them to encounter should they actually go in that direction. They walk across a field, you roll a die. If they encounter something, they encounter something. If they don't, they don't. That is simply how it is. If they go to a tower, you've prepared the tower, and it is prepared for that level at which you prepared it. They encounter it, they suffer, or they succeed, or they walk through it because it's of a higher or lower or mid-level, etc., etc., etc. Sandboxing claims not to have any kind of DM intervention whatsoever, and it is entirely up to the players to explore the world. Neither one of them, I think, is absolutely wrong. Neither one of them, I think, is absolutely in isolation of the other. And I think that when you combine the two together, you get what we call role-playing. I don't think it necessarily matters. And people who'll tell you that, oh, don't be a railroader or don't be a sandboxer or I'm a sandboxer, I think to a large degree it's a label that people want. So you're going to hear the term. At least now you know the difference. Railroading, no choice. Sandboxing, all the choice, apparently. Both of it's an illusion as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, let's ask Mr. Cheese what he thinks on the subject. Well, yes, obviously. I mean, the whole idea of railroad, sandbox, player agency, there's no value. There is no value whatsoever in either one or both or all together. No, let me rephrase. Railroading, where there is absolutely no opportunity for the players to have any kind of effect on the world whatsoever. In other words, whatever they do, the story is going to continue. A classic example of this would be any online computer game ever made, played by today's standards. There are options, but the options are an illusion of choice. It doesn't matter what the character chooses. There will still be a predetermined outcome. There might be multiple outcomes, but each of those multiple outcomes is still predetermined, and the character has absolutely no agency whatsoever to make any changes, and so they might as well not be there. At all. Like some of us wish we could be. So, the idea, though, of Sandbox is that the players are the only ones that are making decisions, and the GM is this amorphous type of creature that is simply there to adjudicate when something arises. This is as hands-off as you can get, and as a result can oftentimes lead to the players not knowing in which direction to head because there is no direction given. There is simply, it's there, just do what you like, kind of like real life, sort of. So, we don't want either of those two situations. Combine the two together, 50-50, 60-70, 70-80, whatever the value is you want. The point is balance. Probably. What? Enough of that. Improvisation. This is another area that you're going to need to focus on, and we're going to focus on heavily in Third Circle. We want to make it easy. We don't want improvisation to struggle. It shouldn't, actually. And if the players are realizing or seeing that you're improvising because you're scratching your head and you're rolling your eyes and you're kind of rolling around on the floor and you're drooling a little bit and you're trying to, and then you come up with the name of the NPC that they've just asked him his name, that's not improvisation. That's struggle, strife, and woe, and we don't want that. So how are we going to make it better? How are we going to make your improvisation better? Well, imagination is the fundamental. Now, we can develop and train our imaginations. We work on things, particularly free-form association. Free-form association is where you take various things and you link them together. And examples that I've used in the online sessions, in the live sessions, I should say, is where you link an orange, a dog named Pogo, and let's say an aircraft carrier. And you literally link them together. Why is there an orange? Why is Pogo the dog on an aircraft carrier? Are they on an aircraft carrier? An easy way, of course, is that Pogo was chasing an orange which rolled off the dock and landed on the deck of an aircraft carrier somehow. And Pogo jumped onto the aircraft carrier. That's a very simple kind of link, but it's totally improvised. I promise you, I did not work out that narrative. Improvisation, using our imagination. We know that freeform association is something that we can practice. Look at people on the street. Tell a story based on their shoes, their watch, and their coat. If they're not wearing a watch, what does that mean? Well, nowadays it means that they use their cell phone to look at the time, so they're not particularly worried about the time unless they've got their cell phone in their hand. Anyway. I'm not going to go there. Research, of course, is another avenue. If you have lots of research, if you have done your history, you are far more capable of improvising the nature of the interior of a castle than if you know nothing about a castle. So you can look at research as well. I'm going to rush through this particular section because I've covered it in previous videos and we'll probably come back to it as well. So making it better is about improving your imagination, and there are many ways that you can do that. We also need to have a goal when it comes to improvisation. Our goal is that it must be seamless but consistent. So seamless means that when the characters ask for directions to the nearest town or the nearest tower, or if there is even one of those things, or what the elements are within the heart of a star that they're busy scanning, you can rattle it off without having too much problems. You check your notes which don't exist, and then you list it as if it did exist. That's our ultimate goal, is to make it seamless. Consistency comes about when we start to link those things together on a regular basis. So when they ask the farmer his name, and it is set during the French Revolution, they don't give the peasant standing in the middle of a field in Provence the name of, let's say, Walter. What's wrong with Walter, you might ask? It's not particularly French to my ear. It doesn't really make sense. It's not consistent unless you want that inconsistency to exist, in which case it becomes consistent. Why is Walter standing in a field in Provence during the French Revolution? He was visiting. He is, of course, from the English countryside, and he came to visit his friend Jean-Pierre, who does fit in Provence, and so that's why they found Walter in the field. So our goal of improvisation is where we have created inconsistency by bad improvisation, we use it to bring us back to making it consistent. So that's what we want to ultimately achieve. We're going to look at how to do that later on in another video. And then we're going to test it. We've got some practical applications where we can use this stuff in the field. We can go out there. We can look at this kind of stuff. We can really, really, really build on these kinds of things and understand that the pressure of coming up with things can be removed if you just remember to breathe. As was mentioned, imagination is the key. It is the key. And so we should turn to that. What are the 4 components of imagination? Quickly, quickly, come on. We're all in this together. Yes, yes, okay. Research. Go and do some research. Read up. Google is your friend. What? Experience? Yes. Go and do things. Go to museums. Look at how they do it. Go to medieval fairs. Yes, yes. Okay. Experience, research. Third one, free form of association. Yes, he spoke about that one, linking things together. And the last one is learning to use inspiration. Yes, inspiration. That's the one that comes to you whenever you are not thinking about something. So it is important that we learn to occasionally stop thinking and to just let life pass us by. The solution will come to us, but it also means that sometimes we need a break, a cut, a moment for us to gather ourselves, reflect, and then let imagination strike us like lightning. Combine that with research, with experience, and with freeform association, and you will have a seamless improvisational performance that will rival my own. Not likely. Performance. All the different media. Multiple mediums are being used here to create our performance. And we're not talking just a theatrical performance or accents. We're talking about little things that you do to add to your game. You don't need to add any of these to your game. You can play a game without anything. You can play a game without paper. You can play a game where the die is literally, I'm thinking of a 2-sided die, a coin, in other words. You could play it without, you can minimize it all the way down, sure. Or you can expand it all the way out to being a good performance. Now, a good performance is a whole bunch of things. So what works? What works for your group is important. Maybe your group doesn't like loud noises. So making vocal sounds is not going to work for your group. Maybe your group are pudgy-fingered little fat furry things that when they reach across the table, their flabby arms knock over the miniatures. So maybe that won't work. Perhaps your group are all colorblind, in which case maps that are made in color won't work. It's about figuring out what's going to work for your group and what does not work for your group. Augmented reality dungeon maps are starting to become the thing where we've got animated elements, touch screen interfaces, all those kinds of wonderful, wonderful, wonderful new pieces of technology. Is it too disruptive? I will never forget, I was at a convention where we had a person who was playing this werewolf character and they transformed into a werewolf. The player launched backwards and howled to the moon so loudly that those sitting around him had to block their ears, and everyone in the hall turned to look at what was going on. It was a good performance, but it was very disruptive because then everyone started talking about that and it broke everybody out of that space. So we need to make sure that whatever we do as a performance is not disruptive, but an enhancement, So why do we add this all? Because it makes it better. We need to understand that. We need to figure out what that does. And the way that we're going to be doing that, the biggest one, and it's the one that I challenge you to do, you're going to see that a little bit later on, is where we overcome our own sense of self, in exchange for a group experience. You must also understand that there might very well be people sitting at the table with you who do not want a performance, who cannot stand the idea of accents being produced because for them it is something that is seen as bad. It is mocking of this accent of the people. There are others who might react strongly if you put graphic imagery on the table, or if you force them to try and play a tactical game rather because you are using the miniatures, or there are others as well. We must be aware that when we say we are doing performance, when we are bringing in these things, that there are those who might take objection. As a result, it is always important that the moment you are trying something new, you are trying to break the box, you are trying to see what works for your group, you should ask your group beforehand. Say to them, listen, chaps, I want to try different accents for this time. I would really like your input as to whether you think it's going to work or not. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with saying, I wish for us to move to miniatures because I think this will enhance our game. It will make, again, things better. And again, listen to their responses. That's the best thing you can do. Ask before you do something. Once you have done it, ask for honest feedback. And if someone asks you for honest feedback, this is what you must give them as well. It is only fair. It is the social contract. This has been a big overview of what we're going to be looking at this year in terms of third circle, so the challenge this time is a bit more complicated. Firstly, write down a campaign idea. Only spend 5 minutes on this. You may not spend more than 5 minutes. If you're a slow writer, 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. 5 minutes, write down a campaign idea. An invasion of sea people onto the third planet of Deneb have caused the entire population to go into exile, and a hero must be found who will save them from that. There we go. There's an entire campaign in 5 minutes or less, and that was less. Now spend another 5 minutes and add a giant whale, a red cape, and a religious woman to your campaign. Add them in. I don't care how you do it. Go back and say, hey, the giant whale has been killed on the planet. That's why the sea folk invaded the planet, and the leader of the sea folk has this red cape that they wear, and they are being opposed by a religious woman who feels that it is her destiny to bring about the end of the galaxy. Okay? And now go to the mirror and bark at yourself. Bark! Oh, that was a terrible bark. Grrr, growl, bark. Do a sound, make a noise. Improvisation, performance, and campaign is about bringing it all together so that we add these all of these things into our repertoire to make ourselves truly great GMs. You've got this. Really do. Trust me. So that's it for today's third circle, very introductory session. So we're all on the same kind of page in terms of campaigns, improvisation, and performance. And I hope that it has given you a little bit of insight as to what to expect moving forward. Now, it's almost time where the live shows are going to start, which will support each of these videos, whereby we can ask, or you can ask questions, and I will answer them as we live on Twitch and on YouTube, so look out for them. Announcements will be made on www.greatgamemaster.com, where you can get all kinds of other information and look at the books and sign up for our Patreon, which we've got monthly adventures and maps, as well as weekly podcasts. So have a look at that. Until next time, however, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming. Hello and welcome to this week's episode. My name is Guy and we're going to start that one again. Hello. Where am I looking? Hello and welcome to the third circle.